You hold my every moment, you calm my raging seas. You walk with me through fire and heal all my disease. These lyrics sound like a prayer that anyone who has faced illness could hold on to for strength. And for thousands of Christians, that's exactly what this song meant to them. It was an anthem of faith and a testament to the power of their God's healing hands, especially because the man behind the song was overcoming his own battle with cancer. His name was Mike, and his song became a giant success, making him Hillsong famous and even landed him on music charts. Except the story that inspired his hit song was all built on a lie. This is the story of the cancer con of Pastor Michael Guglielmucci. Before we begin, a quick word from the sponsor of this video, Delete Me. Let's talk about something creepy. Data brokers. Data brokers are corporations that collect huge amounts of personally identifiable information. Things like social security numbers, birthdays, past and recent addresses, and more, and package it all together to sell our personal information to anyone willing to pay, putting us at risk for identity theft or worse. No federal privacy laws for how our data is mined and shared currently exist. And in 2022, the most targeted age group for identity theft were 30 to 39-year-olds. It makes sense when there's so much of our personal information getting shared online without our consent. But trying to remove one's name, age, address, phone number, past addresses, and the names of relatives can be time-consuming and stressful. Instead of spending countless hours finding every website on the internet that contains your private info and submitting requests to get it taken down, get it done in minutes with Delete Me. Delete Me is an amazing service that will not just find and remove your personal information from hundreds of data broker websites, but they'll continuously scan for new data that shows up and get that removed as well. Delete Me searches all the top data broker websites, and on average, they find and remove over 2,000 pieces of personal data for a customer in their first 2 years. To date, they've removed over 100 million pieces of data for their customers. So if you want to get your personal information removed from search results on the web, go to joindeleteme.com/notthegoodgirl. Delete Me is offering 20% off their privacy plans to all my viewers with my code NOTTHEGOODGIRL. Once again, that's joindeleteme.com/notthegoodgirl. Now, back to the video. Jonathan Guglielmucci was born in 1978 to Danny and Sharon Guglielmucci in Adelaide, Australia. From day one, Mike and his siblings' lives revolved around church. His father was a pastor who founded the Edge Church in Adelaide, and he was a leading member of the Australian Christian Churches, aka the ACC, which is one of the largest Pentecostal networks in the country. Mike was raised to lead, speak, and have faith. He sang in church, he preached, he played instruments, and he embodied the Pentecostal foundation that emotion and energy are essential tools in worship. Pentecostalism is built on the belief in a direct personal experience of God through the Holy Spirit. It's a faith known for expressive worship, speaking in tongues, and what they perceive to be divine healing and modern-day miracles. When he preached, people listened, but when he sang, he became a whole different person. Many thought Mike's voice was powerful and raw. Like a seasoned worship leader, he performed with his eyes closed, his hands raised, and he would often cry mid-song. Mike used this to draw people into an emotional space that felt deeply personal and spiritual. As a teenager, he played in the Youth Alive band, and in 1998, he formed the Christian group Foryon with his brother Chris. The band released a 9-track EP titled Cold and toured schools across Adelaide. By Mike's early 20s, he was ready to step fully into ministry. He started by joining Planet Shakers, which is a youth-focused megachurch and Christian college based out of Melbourne, Australia. If Planet Shakers sounds familiar, it's because I spoke about it in my mini-series on Daystar, as Joshua Brown, Rachel Lamb's husband, was also a member of Planet Shakers. Planet Shakers is known for its emphasis on Pentecostal charismatic theology, which includes high-energy worship and hype-fueled conferences. Just like a multi-level marketing conference, the bigger the hype, the bigger the believer. In this environment, Mike was an instant hit. As a young and charismatic leader, he was the embodiment of the cool pastor prototype. In 2001, when Mike was 23 years old, he married his Christian girlfriend Amanda. With a wife on his arm, he could now be looked at as a passionate preacher, a gifted songwriter, and a faithful husband. Together, the pair referred to themselves as Team Goog, and they made plans to build a life of ministry together, one that inspired others through their faith. Mike was on the fast track to fame in the Christian rock scene, but in 2006, at the age of 29, he made a shocking announcement. He revealed to his congregation he had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of terminal blood cancer. While he didn't specify how long he had to live, he made sure to let his followers know that the outlook was grim. He asked his supporters for prayers and that they donate money to support his family during such a challenging time. Keep in mind, while Michael was asking for money due to his new diagnosis, unlike the US, Australia provides universal healthcare to its citizens. Mike's diagnosis came as a shock to his community. Prior to the announcement, he appeared as though he was in the prime of his life. He was young and full of energy. Now, he was on Instagram with a shaved head and using a cane to walk. Never one to miss a performance, Mike gave interviews sharing what it was like to be handed a terminal diagnosis, saying, quote, "I went to the hospital expecting to get some tests and got the news that I have cancer and quite an aggressive form of cancer. There's nothing that can prepare you for that kind of news." End quote. Prayer messages and monetary donations poured in for the young pastor. Mike made posts thanking his supporters for their encouragement, and he promised to put his faith in God for healing and hold out for a miracle. Because he was now diagnosed with a terminal illness but refused to turn his back on his God, claiming that the illness made his faith stronger, Mike was invited to speak in front of thousands, usually appearing with a bald head and visibly weak from his medications. For the next 2 years, Mike sent his parents and his wife emails from his doctors about his prognosis and how his treatment was going. He also had his parents or his wife take him to the hospital for his appointments, but he refused to let any of them come inside with him. Throughout treatment, Mike documented his journey online. To cope, he turned to the place that had always made the most sense to him: music. He sat down and wrote a song to capture his pain, his faith, and his hope for healing. That song was titled Healer. With lyrics like, "You walk with me through fire and heal all my disease," it captured the aching hope of suffering believers and framed their God as the only true source of restoration, physically and spiritually. Mike had recorded the song in his bedroom. One time, while in Sydney, Mike was hanging out with Joel and Ben Houston, the sons of Hillsong founder Brian Houston. Brian had stopped by to see his sons and couldn't believe what he witnessed while there. That night, according to Brian, he watched Mike writhing on the floor as the pain became more and more intense as Mike shook and groaned with sweat beads breaking out across his brow. Those around him began to gently pray and do what they could to keep him comfortable, while Michael himself turned on his own bedroom recording of his song Healer, claiming it would calm him. Fortunately, Mike made it through that difficult night. Once a professional demo of the song was made and began being shared and played regularly, Healer was an instant hit and spread like holy wildfire through worship circles and Sunday sermons. Mike was even invited to perform his hit at Hillsong's annual conference. At the time, Hillsong wasn't just any church, it was the church. Through the use of high-quality and expensive productions, emotional worship, and a feel-good message of faith, Hillsong turned worship into a worldwide brand. Hillsong had figured out how to make church feel like a concert and pastors like celebrities. With packed-out conferences, an in-house record label, and campuses in major cities around the world, Hillsong became the blueprint for the modern megachurch. Hillsong holds its main conference every year in Australia, and it's Australia's largest annual conference. The conference alone brings in over $28 million annually. In footage from Hillsong's conference, Michael was seen on stage with an oxygen tube running into his nose. In front of a stadium full of people, he performed Healer like a man with everything to lose. It was such a hit that the song was included on Hillsong's 2008 album, This Is Our God. Healer quickly became an international symbol of holy hope. Footage of Mike performing while seemingly dying quickly went viral, and Healer reached number 2 on the ARIA chart. The ARIA charts are the official weekly music sales chart for Australia. But Mike and Hillsong had more in common than mass appeal and God-given popularity. They were both using smoke and mirrors to hide what was really going on behind closed doors. For Hillsong, that included headlines about rockstar pastor Carl Lentz being fired for cheating on his wife. Then Hillsong founder Brian Houston was accused of covering up his father's essay of children. There were also stories of financial mismanagement, unpaid labor, and burnout among staff, and a culture where image mattered more than accountability. I covered all this in my documentary titled The Scandalous Downfall of Justin Bieber's Pastor and Hillsong Church. And then there was Mike. He died and the world moved on. Just kidding. According to Danny, Mike's father, one day, Mike texted his parents out of the blue to say he needed them to come see him urgently. Danny and Sharon were beside themselves with grief, thinking their son had just been told he only had weeks left to live. Once they were all together, Mike confessed that he didn't have cancer at all, and he never had. Although they were immediately relieved that their son was well, they quickly realized the gravity of the situation and just how sick he was mentally rather than physically. The very next day, on August 20th of 2008, his father Danny stood before his congregation at Edge Church in Adelaide and read a statement on Mike's behalf. Mike wrote, quote, "It is with much pain and sadness that I make this statement today. For over 16 years, I have struggled with an addiction to adult pornography. As a result of this secret life of sin, my body would often break down. I'd report the cause of my symptoms simply as illnesses, and I've thrown my life into a ministry for many years trying to compensate for my sin. I believe that I do love Jesus, and I know that he loves me, and it is this love, along with the prayers of people around the world, that bring me to this place of confession. 2 years ago, I reported that I was suffering from cancer. The truth is that although I was ill, I did not have cancer, but was again using the misdiagnosis to hide the lie that I was living. I've dishonored God, my wife, my family, and the church, and I take full responsibility for my actions and would like to make it very clear that no one else was in any way aware of my double life. I'm fully committed to a process of discipline, recovery, and restitution, and will see this process through to whatever extent is necessary. I am deeply sorry and pray that you will find it in your hearts to forgive me." End quote. After having his daddy read his statement, Danny also told his congregation, quote, "Mike thought he could escape the pain by creating a diversion from his addiction to adult pornography, so he created the cancer scenario." End quote. The reaction from his congregation was disbelief, followed by a wave of grief and confusion. People had prayed for Mike, cried for him, shared his story with others in need of hope, and donated quite a bit of money to him. And now they were left questioning everything they thought they knew about him. And there were questions for those who were close to him, too. People wondered if Mike's parents and his wife were in on the cancer con. Danny and Sharon stood by their son, but they said they had been blindsided by Mike's confession. Sharon shared how deep the deception ran, and that when she dropped Mike off at the hospital all those times, she really believed he was there to receive treatment. Within days of the announcement, Mike was stood down by the Assemblies of God. The governing body also announced an investigation to establish if there was any illegal activity in his solicitation of donations. And then, the media got word of the story. In the wake of the scandal, Danny and Mike told media outlets that they promised to return any and all donations which had been made to Mike's cancer fund if people requested the money back. But the amount donated by faithful churchgoers has never been disclosed by Mike or his father. Danny reassured his congregation that Mike was receiving psychiatric treatment to address the underlying pornography addiction and the cancer con itself. When the media interviewed members of the church, many weren't even mad at Mike. One said, quote, "Michael was a man, he sinned, and he needs to be forgiven." End quote. Another said, "Everybody is a sinner and we've all been forgiven by God." Mike's wife Amanda shared a similar story as her in-laws. She claimed to have had no idea that her husband wasn't sick and that all of the symptoms, hospital visits, and emotional updates were simply an act. At some point, Mike became so unwell she quit work to look after him. In a statement to the Advertiser, she said, quote, "In the middle of the night, he was in so much pain I would put towels in the microwave to try and give him some relief in his back. Before I stopped working to care for him, I was busy. He'd have doctor's appointments when I couldn't be there, and he would say, "It's fine, you don't need to be there," or I would just drop him off at the hospital. End quote. Amanda supported Mike's recovery and insisted he was a good man who had become trapped by lies, and she hoped that with time and support they would be able to salvage their marriage. Amanda told one media outlet, quote, "I was the first one he told. He confessed everything to me. He just went through it, where it had started, everything in his life as a young kid, the patterns. He was crying, sobbing actually, absolutely sobbing. He just said, 'I don't have cancer.' He was terrified. I still remember the look on his face. It was a very hard moment for him, as it was for me hearing it. I could just see a really broken, unwell man. At that point, I found it really quite hard to get angry." End quote. As for Healer, the song that had reached number 2 on the ARIA charts as an anthem of hope was instantly pulled from Hillsong's platforms. The live video disappeared, although it has since been re-uploaded. Hillsong issued a statement distancing itself from Mike and confirmed that the song would no longer be used in any official capacity and that royalties would no longer be paid to Mike. Brian Houston also issued a public statement revealing the extent of Mike's deception, and that not only had Mike faked the diagnosis, he had performed physical symptoms with startling conviction. Brian told the media, quote, "This is easily the biggest and most elaborate hoax I have ever personally witnessed. I am still perplexed by it." End quote. In an interview with Today Tonight in Australia, which aired not long after the cancer con was revealed, Mike struggled to say out loud that he did not in fact have cancer. When pressed, he awkwardly replied, "To the best of my knowledge, no I don't. A doctor hasn't diagnosed me with cancer." Mike almost seemed allergic to the truth, but his answer seems to have laid the groundwork in some ways for Belle Gibson's similarly evasive answer to the same question about the same con in the same country 7 years later. I covered Belle Gibson's story in depth in my video titled "The Real Woman Behind Netflix's Apple Cider Vinegar."
To the best of my knowledge, I'm well.
So you're saying you don't have cancer?
To the best of my knowledge, no, I don't. I've never had, a doctor hasn't diagnosed me with cancer, no.
So you've been conning people all this time?
I've been living a life for more than just 2 years.
For 2 years, Guglielmucci convinced the world, including those closest to him, he was dying of cancer.
I've been hiding who I am for so long. I've told too many people how they should live their lives.
Just for a moment I thought, oh, you don't have cancer? It's like the relief was amazing, and then all of a sudden the shock of what he just said and the consequences of that put us into another form of grieving.
His family's been left reeling over his confession, including devastated Father Danny, who founded the Edge Church in Adelaide.
We had no idea. We only grieved. That's what we did. We grieved at the possible loss of a son.
Thinking his son was dying, Guglielmucci Sr. had even begun to plan his son's funeral.
We've had 2 years of that pain. So as a father, I don't know how to say this other than I'm so happy that he's alive and now can get help, but very devastated by the damage that it's caused.
Guglielmucci admitted going to great lengths to keep up the charade, deceiving his wife and even his own mother, sending phony emails from non-existent medical practitioners.
I did email my mum a few times and say to her, Mike's going to be okay, trying to alleviate, I suppose, the stress in her. They were things I would report to them myself and just say, oh yeah, I've had some tests and everything's okay, or I've had some tests and everything's not okay.
In the same interview, Mike said that although he didn't have cancer, the symptoms he shared online were legitimate. He struggled to breathe, he had trouble walking, his hair fell out, and he frequently vomited. Then he defended the performance by saying, "I'm not that good of an actor." Ironically, since coming clean, he hasn't had any of these symptoms. Mike said the 2 years he was running the scam were hell for him emotionally, and he was plagued with guilt. But there didn't seem to be as much concern for those he had deceived. When he was asked why he finally came clean, Mike said he brought the lie to an end because he was tired. Not because it was hurting people, not because it was wrong, just that he was tired. But all was not lost for poor, tired Mike. Admitting to a 16-year porn addiction is one thing, but a fake cancer diagnosis might seem career-ending in any other profession. But in the world Mike comes from, redemption stories are currency, and failure can just as easily be rebranded as turning your test into a testimony. Mike knew that sometimes a fall from grace is just the beginning of a comeback, and although he dropped out of the spotlight for a few years, he made his return in 2020, complete with a rebrand. Gone was the worship leader with the oxygen tube and larger-than-life persona. In his place was a man who claimed to have been through it. Mike had a lifetime's worth of redemption to draw from for content, and now spoke about shame, addiction, and healing, not as a pastor, but as a survivor. Mike also shared that in the depths of his recovery, he had an epiphany. Coming clean had given him a new connection to his God, and according to Mike, God had used that season of brokenness to communicate a new calling, to help the people of Port Adelaide, a working-class community in South Australia. He also shared that he would do so with Amanda at his side. She had done what was expected of her and forgiven her husband for his deception. On January 12th of 2021, Michael and Amanda registered a new charity to carry out their mission. Lighthouse City Mission Incorporated claims to, quote, help financially disadvantaged people, people with chronic illness and disabilities, people suffering from unemployment, homelessness, and victims of crime, as well as the general community in Australia, end quote. In a 2021 Vanity Fair article, Mike said that his charity work doesn't excuse his sins, but he deserves a second chance at making a difference. He told them, quote, we believe people are more than the mistakes they make. Everyone is worthy of being loved and supported. 13 years ago, after the reality of my brokenness was made public, our marriage went through a time of separation. I am so aware of the pain that my past decisions have caused others, and I will never run and hide from that, end quote. No charges were ever brought forth against Mike. Since his return to the public eye in 2020, he delivers sermons across Australia with themes like Finding Redemption and Arise, where he encourages congregants to rise above their challenges just like he has. His father is also still preaching. Unfortunately, in 2016, his youth pastor brother Chris was struck and killed by lightning at a church camp. While Michael had a rebrand, Hillsong did not. After decades of scandals, the global megachurch brand is now splintered and shrinking. At its peak, it claimed to host more than 150,000 weekly attendees across 30 countries, with campuses in major cities like New York, London, Paris, and Los Angeles. But after a string of high-profile scandals, Hillsong's empire has steadily crumbled. Several U.S. churches have rebranded, including Hillsong Atlanta and Hillsong San Francisco. Today, the number of American campuses has dropped from 16 to just 5. Mike's story is one of faith-turned-theater, worship-turned-performance, and a man who played the role of a dying pastor so he could capitalize off of it. It begs the question, did Mike make a scene in front of Brian Houston so Brian would notice his song and make him Hillsong famous? In the comments under Mike's interview with Today Tonight, many are supportive of Mike and some even say they respect him. Almost all of the comments that mention forgiveness for Mike also mention his hit song, which goes to show just how much celebrities are worshipped and idolized, even in religion. And while those same celebrities are put on a pedestal, they are never held to a higher standard by the ones who put them there. At the time of this recording, there has never been confirmation that Mike paid back a single cent of the money that was donated to him. This has been the CancerCon and rebrand of Pastor Michael Guglielmucci. Sign up for Delete Me now using the link in the description box or the QR code. Thank you to Delete Me for sponsoring this video.